words about William F. Buckley. I mean, a bunch of people already asked me about him. I loved the man. I didn't know him nearly as well as a lot of people at NR. I remember the first time I went to his house for dinner, for the editorial board dinner at his house. I was petrified. I thought it was going to be, Chesterton quotes and Latin puns all night long. And it turned out that he was the most generous, well-mannered person I had ever met. And I truly mean that. I've met a lot of smart people. I don't know who the smartest person I ever met was, with possible exceptions of my dad and my dog. But Buckley was, obviously a brilliant man, incredibly accomplished and all those sorts of things. But the thing that I will always remember about the man was his incredible graciousness. He was the kind of guy who really made me appreciate what good manners are. Good manners aren't making other people feel awkward by sort of pointing out that they don't know what fork to use. Good manners are the things you do to make other people feel welcome. And Buckley mastered that. William F. Buckley made people feel welcome. He was intellectually curious about what you had to say. The stories of him being incredibly generous and inquisitive about the most random people from all across the country, wrote him letters that he created friendships with. He built a movement by writing letters to people and responding to letters to people in the days before email, and by the force of his own charm. And it was an incredibly impressive accomplishment. And that's why I don't feel this incredible remorse. The guy was 82 years old. He died wealthy in the bed of one of his many homes, having accomplished more than probably this entire room combined will ever accomplish. There may be some Nobel Prize winner here. I don't want to. But so it was a wonderful life, and we're all indebted to him. But we should celebrate his life and not, freak out about his death. That said, this book has been going great. I can't complain about any of it. I can complain about some people's responses to it, but we won't do that. I'll just talk for 2 seconds about the book. I'm only supposed to talk for like 5 minutes here, which is about 45 minutes shorter than I'm used to doing. I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We were one of the very few conservative families on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We were basically like Christians in ancient Rome. We would meet in Riverside Park and, draw a little C in the dirt. You rub it out and say, "I'll meet you in the catacombs under Zabars." And all my life, it bothered me, that, everything I'd been taught by my dad about conservatism and about communism and all these sorts of things, it bothered me that I kept getting called the fascist. I get called a fascist. I got called a fascist all the time on college campuses, and I would always ask these sort of patchouli-soaked hemptivists with open-toed shoes and closed minds. I was like, what is it exactly about? Except for the murder, war, and genocide, what is it exactly about Nazism you don't like? And they would give the same response that my basset hound used to try to give me when I tried to feed it a grape. Like, what? They didn't get it. I tried to explain to them, that the National Socialists were socialists, and they believed in the centralized government. They wanted to destroy traditional Christianity. They wanted to do all these sorts of things. They were opposed to everything that conservatives believe. Conservatives in the Anglo-American tradition basically believe in two things. They believe in free markets, limited government, the sovereignty of the individual, all that sort of thing. And they believe in the importance of tradition, orthodox religion, the wisdom of the ancients, culture, custom, all these sorts of things. And these are the two things that Hitler despised. These are the two things that Mussolini despised. These people were radicals. They wanted to start over from scratch in the Jacobin tradition of starting over from year zero. And yet, it is amazing how deep-seated this idea that somehow conservatives are fascists is on the American left. And, these days we have this thing where we think it's all because of 9/11 and the war on terror. Naomi Wolf has this sand-poundingly idiotic book out about how we live in, not metaphorically or figuratively or anything like that, but literally we live in early 1930s Germany. And this guy, Christopher Hedges, former Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times reporter, has a book out called American Fascists. No one gave him grief about his title. I can't walk down the street for fear of being hit by a pie because of my type. And when the New York Times reviewed his book, the first sentence was, "Of course there are fascists in America." It was all about how Christian conservatives are fascists. Joe Conason wrote, or I should say typed this book, about how Bush is a would-be fascist dictator and all this kind of thing. But it predates 9/11. It predates the War on Terror by a couple generations. During the contract with America, you had Major Owens. When Newt Gingrich, he tried to approach Democrats in the Congressional Black Caucus in the spirit of bipartisanship when he took over Congress, and Major Owens was horrified that Gingrich was inviting him to parties, and he said, "These people are worse than Hitler. But they're practicing genocide. They're practicing cocktail party genocide." And break the little pink pill in half next time. And Charlie Rangel said about the contract with America, these people, Hitler wasn't even talking about doing things like this. And which is technically true. Hitler wasn't talking about zero-based budgeting or term limiting committee chairs. It wasn't on his agenda. Daniel Shore, you might know him from NPR these days. He's that mastodon, chews big frilly fronds from the Paleozoic era. He used to be on CBS Evening News, and he had a report where he said that Barry Goldwater, his planned trip to Europe after his securing of the nomination for the president, his planned trip to Europe was part of an intricate plan of linking up with neo-Nazi elements in Germany in the Birch Garden to coordinate the fall campaign. To say that this was not true is one of the most grotesque understatements you can imagine. Every word in it was a lie, including the commas. And it was just not. He wasn't going to Europe. He wasn't going to Germany. He wasn't meeting. All of it was untrue. But back then, everyone knew that Barry Goldwater was a Nazi, even though he was a libertarian. Remember, Charles Murray. One of the reasons I wrote this book is I'm friends with Charles Murray. I knew him when I was at the American Enterprise Institute when I was a little policy gnome, and I was there when the bell curve came out. Now, whatever problems you might have with the bell curve, I have some of them too. At the end of the day, Charles Murray is a soaked-to-the-bone libertarian, right? And I was watching on local DC news, they were introducing stories about the bell curve coming out, and they were showing clips from Nuremberg rallies. And Charles Murray does not believe that the government is capable or qualified to collect your garbage. But somehow liberals think that he wants to put people in camps. And so there's this deep-seated notion on the left that basically all of you are either Nazis, fascists, or crypto-Nazis or crypto-fascists. And the important thing to keep in mind is that this is a religious conception. That has nothing to do with reality. It has nothing to do with your policy positions. It has to do with the fact that fascist just simply means bad person. In fact, the best working definition of a fascist in American life today is a conservative who's winning an argument. And I think that explains in some ways why the book has received so much, shall we say, hostile reception from some quarters, is because it's basically saying you can't use this word anymore. This is not your word anymore. And damn it, they like this word. They like the idea that that they are the ultimate arbiters of political morality, and that the further you move away from them, the more evil you become. And this is a very inconvenient argument for me to be putting forward, and the fact that they hate my guts anyway makes it even more troublesome, which is why I so much enjoy the New York Times #1 bestseller list. But I must say, and I'm going to close on this, that my greatest accomplishment and what I should have left public life after, in the spirit of showmanship, leaving on a high note, was when Barbra Streisand canceled her subscriptions to the LA Times when they picked me up as a comic.